or the Salvation Army in the UK is possibly, encouraging people to move away from language that might be offensive. And I'm all about like making sure that we're clear on the front. Like
Sure.
marketing helps us get in with folks.
Yeah.
But there was this challenge with saying, well, the words blood and fire don't really connect anymore. And Steve had an interesting point. He's like, the words blood and fire never connected. and then it's just not in Rome, not in the Reformation, not in the 19th century with William and Catherine Booth. And you and I fell on something last year in the very first episode where we looked at your song, I Surrender My Life to Your Blood. And there's something to that language that's so important. And I just don't think we should give it up.
Yeah. Listen, first of all, if you're watching this, go back and listen, and you haven't watched that, you guys, because I think that you guys really, you tackled why it's important, to have this conversation and why it's important to be true to our Lord, to the word. The term blood and the terms blood and fire, I mentioned this to you before we hopped on, the term blood and fire. I was reading in John 6 today about Jesus and how he
talk about something that doesn't fit in with culture.
He said, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no part in me. And he was talking to his disciples, his larger group of people who were following him, so it was out in the open. He's not telling a secret message to anybody coded insider language. He's like saying, unless you eat my flesh and you drink my blood, you have no part in me. I agree, actually, and I said this to several people. I agree with the need to reevaluate what we say to people to make sure it's coming across.
Right.
But maybe part of that conversation is just talking about our motivations, and having honest conversations in community about what's our motivations for doing. Do we just want to soften it, so we don't lose our donors? Or that sounds that even sounds harsh coming. I don't mean that. I'm just saying what's the motivation for it, and maybe that
is it going to win people. If that's the goal, I'm willing to go there for a little bit.
Sure.
The same thing is true with one of the challenges you talked about, the Orange curriculum. But some people sent me some resources, and I looked at them, and there's not a mention. There might be a vague mention of brokenness, but not sin, not hell, not heaven. And look, I'm willing to talk through that. Like I teach eschatology here. Like I'm glad to talk through options that people have dealt with across the years, philosophically, biblically, about the afterlife. Like I'm glad to have that conversation. But we have a starting point, and I'm okay to not like call people sinners, but at some point we need to talk about sin and not just brokenness.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I 100%. It's interesting. There's another Dr. Miller, who's written, and we've talked about